Welcome back. The auto industry bouncing back in a big way into the black after seeing years of red during the financial crisis. But with the new year comes new expectations, not only for consumers, but also for automakers. Who better to talk with than what's in store than Carlos Ghosn. He is the chairman and chief executive officer of the Renault-Nissan Alliance. Carlos, it's wonderful to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Let me first start with what's happening, these atrocities in Paris. Renault, obviously based in Paris. Have you seen any impact to the business so far? We have not seen markets react to this terrorism. You're on your way to Paris next week.
Yeah. No, I don't think there is, for the moment, any significant impact on the market, even though all people are affected in France with these dramatic events. I think the country is in a state of shock. Even though I'm not in France, but I will be there on Tuesday, I know from different contacts that this will have some kind of impact on economic activity on the short term.
So but you don't necessarily see any impact on business so far, because business has not reacted.
No, it looks like the market is evaluating what is this, what does it mean for business, how much it's going to have an impact in the future. So far, the evaluation is not clear.
Meanwhile, before you go to Paris, you're headed to Detroit. You've got the International North American Auto Show. What can we expect from the show next week?
Oh, a lot of things. You're going to see a lot of products. You're going to see a lot of technologies along the line of zero-emission cars, electric cars, fuel cell cars from one side, the different waves of autonomous drive and driverless cars. I think the Detroit Motor Show should be very rich this year, both from the American makers and the foreign makers.
I think really you were among the first out there in terms of pushing an electric car, pushing the idea that we needed to become more fuel efficient. With oil prices having fallen as much as they have, does that urgency become less important?
Well, maybe on the short term. Obviously, people have a tendency on the short term to see the price of gasoline going down and say, okay, let me go and buy, be a little bit more complacent towards fuel efficiency. I don't think it's a long-term trend. As you know, nobody predicted that oil would be at this level of pricing 1 year ago. So I don't think anybody can predict where oil will be within 1 or 2 years. But the overall trend, both in terms of volatility of oil pricing and second, particularly everything which is about emissions and everything which is relative to climate change, push us to continue to provide and develop technologies which are very efficient in terms of emission or even going towards zero emissions. What
would you like to see in terms of the regulatory environment? We were just talking with Senator Lindsey Graham, who said, look, he is going to push Congress to backtrack these EPA regulations. What has been the impact of the regulations that we've seen out of the EPA to the industry?
Look, we have been adapting to regulation. Obviously, regulations are not the same in the U.S., in China, in Europe. We have different countries, different regulations. And automakers have to adapt to the regulation, which means that this to privilege and continue to develop the technology that would allow us to meet this regulation in a way which makes economic sense. So we know that there are going to be a lot of pros and cons for tougher regulation in the future, and we cannot control that. So the only way we can try to face this reality is to make sure that we are fit enough to develop the different technologies that will allow us to meet this regulation. You know, car makers are everywhere, so that means the U.S. regulation is very important, but the Chinese regulation is also very important, the European regulation, because we have to meet. If you develop a technology for the United States, you're going to use it in China or in Europe and the other way around. So what's important is not so much the evolution in one country, it's the overall trend you're seeing in the major countries in the world.
I think this is such an important point, Carlos. Can you characterize what you're seeing in terms of the global market? What kind of a 2015 are you expecting?
I think 2015 should be good overall. I mean, we're going to see a kind of slow growth in the automotive market due to the fact that there is a slow growth in the economy. We're going to see a very unbalanced situation depending on what is the market you're looking at. The US should be good. I think should be growing in 2015. China should be growing in 2015. Europe also, the recovery of Europe should continue. But we're going to continue to have some tough situations in Russia, for example, in Brazil, or even in Japan.
And Japan, of course, we know is in recession. Of course, Europe has been really weakening. How significant has this been? Obviously, the weak yen has been an issue in Japan. Characterize the global markets for us.
Look, I would say that 2014 has been a year where mainly the United States and China have been the main engine for our industry. And unfortunately, it's going to continue to be the case in 2015, even though I still consider that Europe could be a good surprise. Let's not forget that the U.S. market today is higher than it was in 2007, before the financial crisis.
Wow.
While the European market is still 20% below where it was in 2007. So there is still a margin for the recovery of the European market. That's what makes me reasonably optimistic about the fact that Europe should continue to go up.
Anything you're particularly excited about from Nissan or Renault at the show on Tuesday?
Well, the big presentation of Nissan is going to be the large pickup truck. We're going to show the new Titan, and it's going to come with a diesel engine made by Cummins. I'll tell you more tomorrow.
Okay, Carlos, good to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Best of luck at the show. Carlos Ghosn is the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of the Renault-Nissan Alliance.